The year was 1701. In a wide open clearing in the forest of Kumasi, thousands of people stood shoulder to shoulder. The air was thick and hot, sticking to their skin. No one was dancing, no one was singing. A heavy, ringing silence hung over the crowd. The people known as the Ashanti were a broken puzzle. They were small groups of families and villages scattered like seeds in the wind. Around them, powerful enemies were closing in, hungry for their land and their gold. The Ashanti were tired of living in fear. They were tired of being weak. They were waiting for a sign, anything, to show them they were not alone. Suddenly, the bright afternoon sun vanished. A thick, gray darkness, looking like heavy smoke from a forest fire, rolled over the tops of the trees. The birds stopped chirping. The wind died. Then a sound began to rise from the earth, a low, deep rumble that made the ground shake beneath their feet. High above, in the center of that dark smoke, a spark of golden light appeared. It was not a bird. It was not a star. It was an object made of solid, heavy gold. In our world, something that heavy should fall like a stone and crash into the dirt. But this object, a beautiful shimmering throne, did not fall. It drifted. It spun slowly through the smoky air, catching the last bits of light like a mirror. Witnesses who stood there that day said it moved as slowly as a balloon in a gentle breeze. It floated through the sky until it reached the man standing in the center, a leader named Osei Tutu. Then the impossible happened. The golden stool did not touch the grass. It did not touch the dirt. It lowered itself down, inch by inch, until it rested gently right onto the king's lap. A giant gasp came from the crowd. In that one moment, the people stopped being small, divided groups. They saw this gift from the sky as their new soul. But as they looked at the floating gold, their eyes shifted to the man standing next to the king. He did not carry a sword. He did not wear armor, yet he seemed to hold the very power of the clouds in his hands. His name was Okomfo Anokye. But how could one man make gold float? The answer was hidden long before the crowd, before the king, and before the gold. It was a secret literally locked inside the hands of a baby boy born many years ago. In a small village called Awukugua, a mystery was born. While most births are filled with loud celebration, this one was quiet and strange. When the baby boy entered the world, the people in the room froze. Most babies arrive with their hands open, reaching for the air, but this child had his tiny fists closed tight. They were locked shut like a small wooden box that had no key. The healers and the parents tried to gently open his fingers, but they would not move. It was as if his hands were made of stone. The elders of the village whispered that this was a forbidden sign. They named the boy Okomfo Anokye, but they knew he was not a normal child. When his hands finally opened days later, the people let out a cry of shock. He wasn't just holding air. Inside his tiny palms were mysterious, sacred objects, charms that no human baby should ever be born with. From that very first day, the village knew he was a bridge between the world we can see and a world we cannot. As he grew, Okomfo Anokye did not play games with the other children. He was often found deep in the green forest, standing perfectly still. Those who saw him said he looked like he was listening to the trees or talking to the wind. He understood secrets of nature that the adults had forgotten. The elders saw a wisdom in him that was far beyond his years. He didn't just know the history of his people, he seemed to know what was coming next. This was his time of preparation. He was learning how to use the forbidden gifts he brought into this world, the same gifts he would use to change the map of Africa forever. But a bridge needs two sides to connect. While the young priest was growing in power, the people he was born to save were still struggling in the shadows of their enemies. They were waiting for a leader who could match the priest's spirit with the strength of a king. The connection between the priest and the future king was the final piece of the puzzle. While the young priest was growing in power, the people he was born to save were living through their darkest days. The Ashanti were not always a giant empire. Long ago, they were small groups of people living in the forest, separate and alone. They were like a broken toy with missing parts. Because they were not united, they were weak. And in that world, being weak meant being in danger. Their biggest fear was a kingdom called the Denkira. The Denkira were the bullies of the land. They were very strong and had many soldiers. Every year, they forced the Ashanti groups to pay them lots of gold and send their best food. If the Ashanti did not obey, the Denkira would hurt them. The people had to bow their heads and do whatever they were told. They had no one to lead them and no way to say no. While his people were suffering, Okomfo Anokye was traveling far from home. He was not just walking, he was searching. He knew that magic by itself could not save a nation. He needed a partner, a man with the heart of a lion who was brave enough to stand up to the bullies. In a faraway place, he finally found him. His name was Osei Tutu. Osei Tutu was a young man who knew what it felt like to be away from his family. When the priest looked at him, he didn't just see a soldier. He saw a king who could hold the soul of all the people. The two men sat together under the shade of the giant trees and made a secret promise. Okomfo Anokye would use his sky powers to guide the people, but only if Osei Tutu was ready to lead them into the fire. They returned to the village of Kumasi as partners. Okomfo Anokye told the people to stop hiding. He told the small, scattered groups that the time for being afraid was over. He promised them that if they gathered together, the sky itself would send a sign that they were meant to be one giant superpower. The people were nervous. They looked at the strong Denkira soldiers nearby, and then they looked at the priest with the mysterious hands. They chose to trust him. They gathered by the thousands in a wide-open clearing, standing so still you could hear the wind. They were waiting for a miracle that would either save them or change their world forever. Above them, the clouds were already beginning to turn black. The air in the clearing of Kumasi felt like it was made of heavy glass. No one moved. No one spoke. Thousands of people held their breath, their eyes fixed on the man who had promised them the impossible. In the year 1701, history changed in a single moment. The bright afternoon sun began to vanish, but it was not because of the night. A thick, dark cloud, grayer than charcoal and heavier than any rainstorm, rolled over the tops of the trees. A sound started to rise from the earth. It was a low, deep rumble that shook the ground beneath the people's feet. Suddenly, a tiny spark of light appeared in the middle of the dark smoke. It was not a bird or a star. It was an object made of solid, heavy gold. In our world, something that heavy should fall like a rock and crash into the dirt, but this object did not fall. The golden stool, known as the Sika Kofi, began to float. Witnesses said it moved as slowly as a balloon in a gentle breeze, spinning and shimmering against the black sky. It drifted through the wind until it reached the leader of the Ashanti, Osei Tutu. Then the miracle happened. The heavy gold throne did not touch the grass or the mud. It lowered itself down, inch by inch, and settled gently right onto the king's lap. It was as if a giant invisible hand had placed it there. The people were in total shock. In that 1 second, they stopped being small, divided groups and became one giant nation. They believed the sky itself had given them a soul. They were no longer afraid of the bullies who surrounded them. They finally had something to fight for, a symbol that belonged to everyone. But as the crowd looked at the glowing gold, they realized that Okomfo Anokye was not finished. He had shown them the soul of their nation, but now he needed to show them its strength. To prove that this new kingdom would never be broken, he walked over to a giant rock in the center of the village. He reached for a metal sword, and what he did next created a mystery that scientists still cannot explain hundreds of years later. After the golden stool settled on the king's lap, the people knew they had a soul. But a nation also needs a foundation that cannot be moved. Okomfo Anokye wanted to show the world that the Ashanti Empire would never be broken. Okomfo Anokye walked to the center of the village near a giant, solid rock that sat deep in the earth. In his hand, he held a long, metal sword. He didn't look at the crowd, he looked at the sky, and then at the stone beneath his feet. With one powerful movement, he drove the metal blade deep into the solid rock. In our world, metal should bend or break if you hit a rock that hard, but the sword did not break. It went into the stone as if the rock were made of soft butter. Okomfo Anokye stood back and told the people something they would never forget. He said that as long as that sword stayed inside the rock, the Ashanti nation would remain strong and united. But if anyone ever managed to pull it out, the kingdom would fall. Many people think this is just an old legend, but this is where the history gets even stranger. That sword is still there today. For over 300 years, it has sat in the same spot in the ground in Kumasi. People from all over the world have traveled to see it. Very strong men have tried to pull it out with their hands. People have even brought giant machines and tractors to try and tug the sword from the stone, but it does not move. It does not even wiggle. It is as if an invisible force is holding it in place, protecting the promise made by the priest so long ago. This sword became a symbol of strength. It told the enemies of the Ashanti that their power was not just made of wood and skin, but of something much deeper that no human could explain. But the sword and the stool were only the beginning. To make sure the people really believed, Okomfo Anokye began to show them wonders that seemed to control time itself. Okomfo Anokye had given the people a soul with the golden stool and a foundation with the unmovable sword. But to truly unite a people who had been afraid for so long, he needed to show them that his power over nature was absolute. He needed to prove that the world itself would bend to protect the new Ashanti nation. Word of the floating throne and the sword in the stone spread like wildfire through the forest. But some people still wondered, was this truly a sign from the sky, or was it just a lucky moment? Okomfo Anokye decided to show them that he could control time and life itself. One day, in front of a group of doubting leaders, the priest took a small seed from a fruit. He didn't plant it in a garden or wait for the rain. He simply pressed the seed into the dirt at his feet. As the people watched, the ground began to ripple. A tiny green sprout poked through the soil. In a normal world, a tree takes many years to grow tall, but as Okomfo Anokye stood there, the sprout began to stretch. It grew into a sapling, then a young tree, and finally a massive leafy giant, all before the sun had moved across the sky. By the time the meeting was over, the people were sitting in the shade of a tree that had not existed that morning. But his most famous wonder was used to protect the people from their enemies. When the powerful Denkira army came looking for the Ashanti, Okomfo Anokye did not tell the people to run, he told them to stand still. According to historical accounts, the priest called upon a thick white mist that rolled out of the trees like a heavy blanket. He used his power to make the Ashanti army seem invisible to their enemies. The Denkira soldiers marched right past them, unable to see the thousands of men standing just a few feet away. It was as if the forest itself was hiding its children. These were not just magic tricks to show off. Each event was a message. The growing tree showed that the new nation would grow fast and strong. The invisible army showed that the people would always be protected. With every miracle, the broken puzzle of the Ashanti people was being glued back together into a single, unbreakable superpower. The miracles of the past were not just stories to be forgotten. They became the very heartbeat of a nation that still stands today. Even though hundreds of years have passed, the signs Okomfo Anokye left behind haven't disappeared. Today, the Ashanti people are a proud and powerful group in the country of Ghana. They still look to the same symbols that fell from the sky and were driven into the rock over 300 years ago. But where are these magical objects now? The golden stool is still alive. It is not kept in a museum for everyone to touch, and it is never allowed to sit on the dusty ground. It is considered so sacred that it has its own special guards and its own throne to sit on. The Ashanti believe that if the stool were ever lost or destroyed, the soul of their people would disappear with it. Because of this, it is hidden and protected as the most valuable treasure in the kingdom. And what about the sword in the stone? If you travel to the city of Kumasi today, you can visit the exact spot where Okomfo Anokye pushed that metal blade into the rock. It is still there, standing tall and unmoving. Even with all our modern tools and giant machines, the sword remains stuck fast. It is a physical reminder that some things in history cannot be explained by science alone. Modern doctors and scientists have visited the sword, and they have studied the stories of the priest who was born with objects in his hands. Some say these were just clever tricks used to bring a divided people together. But others look at the sword and the floating throne and believe that something truly beyond our world happened that day in 1701. What do you think? Was Okomfo Anokye just a very smart man who knew how to lead? Or did something truly fall from the sky to change Africa forever? The history of the Ashanti reminds us that when people are divided, they are weak. But when they find a single soul to believe in, they can become an empire that lasts for centuries. The golden stool and the unmovable sword are more than just metal and gold. They are proof that a miracle can turn a broken puzzle into a masterpiece.